Can't talk about one without including the other. Weight loss and a calorie deficit go hand in hand. But you're not quite sure what a calorie deficit is or how to get yourself into the right calorie deficit for you, because all you hear is grobbly gobbly goo when someone says you gotta eat in a calorie deficit if you want to lose weight. You, my friend, are not alone. Let's clear away the confusion right now. Before diving in, when you hear me say lose weight or weight loss, I am using those terms interchangeably with fat loss. Since that is what we really want, we just don't know it yet. But we'll get there. Saying that I want to lose weight feels less attacking mentally than saying I need to lose fat. That's a me problem. With that out of the way, back to calorie deficit. A calorie deficit is essentially you and I consuming fewer calories than our bodies uses in a day. Another way to view it is calories are a unit of energy measurement. The amount of food energy units we eat impacts the amount of energy we get to utilize for a variety of daily tasks. For example, the bowl of oatmeal with turkey bacon I ate this morning supplied me with around 340 calories or 340 units of energy. Let's say I go down into my happy place to lift weights. Okay, so it was my happy place until I noticed that people don't clean up after themselves. Thought that was just a gym issue, but it happens when your gym is at home too. Anyway, let's say I'm down here in my happy place and I lift some weights, followed by a 30-minute walk, then some light stretching. During this time, my body is checking in with what I ate and comparing that to the energy I exerted during my workout to determine if the energy exchange is even or if it needs to pull resources or store resources. And why is this important to know? Our body is an energy reservoir where if we do not provide it with enough food energy, our bodies are forced to find a way to cover for the lack in energy resources from food, or resorts to looking for other forms of energy in our stored fat to make up the difference. That's a good thing, because hello weight loss. This is my oversimplified version of things because this process has to happen repeatedly across multiple meals over a period of time for visible weight loss to happen. That makes those transformational weight loss videos so interesting to watch. On the other end of the spectrum, if I ate that same breakfast of oatmeal and turkey bacon, then I crawled my behind back into bed and went to sleep, or I sat up and binge watched shows on Hulu, my body would do its survey and determine that I don't need all those calories for those two activities. Not a lot of calories are needed to sleep or sit and do nothing. During its survey, it takes the excess energy that I did not use and it decides to store it away in my fat reserves. This is how we wake up one day and we discovered that we've developed arms that jiggle. Thighs have expanded to the point that now when we walk, they rub together. Too many days eating on this end of the spectrum where we are taking in more calorie energy than we need, not understanding the basic concept of calorie deficit, is how I managed to gain 80 pounds. So how can you create a calorie deficit that works for your lifestyle? Here are a few options you can mix and match to find the right fit for you. Don't go yelling at me, but the most utilized choice is to document your food intake. This method is backed by science, and those who skillfully and successfully transform their bodies for a living, they track and log their food intake. Documenting my food intake allowed me to see the overall calories, the macronutrient breakdown of protein, fat, carbohydrates, fiber, sodium, and sugar that I was consuming. This method made it easier for me to spot eating inconsistencies, gaps, and where targeted tweaks could be made for better sustainable results. I was not pleased about the process of documenting because I thought it was something that was going to just consume my life. And then I realized over time that it's not a process that actually has to be maintained for life. Once it is that you get a good grasp of how to document and what it is that you're looking for when you're documenting, it makes it easier to get into that place where most people want to be, where you're intuitively eating. Now that I know how to do documenting, I know a little bit more about nutrition, I am able to eat more intuitively the majority of the time throughout the year, and I did slip back into documenting every so often when I notice that I am either starting to get outside of my comfort zone in my body and how it moves. Then I use documenting to help me more readily pinpoint where I need to make some changes. You don't want to count, document, or log anybody's calories, yet you want to lose a little bit of weight, right? I get it. We see a number of individuals who seem to be able to eat without relying on the hassle and worry of documenting, and we want that luxury too, right? There are a handful of people who are outliers, those who have really good genetics and or no history of crazy dieting in their past. Then there are those who have an extensive history of dieting, and during that process they have learned how to adequately eyeball the right food intake based on their needs, where they can intuitively decipher how much food to eat that fits their goals. How can you achieve a good calorie deficit if you are not genetically privileged nor have built up a solid intuitive standard of eating habits? So what can we do? Start with what and how you are currently eating and reduce the serving amount. For example, if you normally serve yourself 4 pancakes, 3 eggs, and say 5 slices of bacon and a cup of orange juice. To create a calorie deficit, try serving yourself 2 or 3 pancakes, 2 eggs, and 4 strips of bacon, or keep your plate the same but pass on the orange juice and have a cup of tea which has virtually no calories whatsoever that need documented. Decreasing the quantity of food intake at each meal is a very viable way to put yourself in a calorie deficit without the hassle of documenting. This method is very similar to learning how to ride a bike. It takes a good amount of intuition, mindfulness, and practice before it is that you can ride a bike, especially a bike with no hands. Because back in the day, being able to ride your bike without having your hands on the handlebar, that was a skill that earned you some extra bragging rights on the block. And we can have the same bragging rights when it comes to being able to create a calorie deficit that works with our lifestyle. Maybe, just maybe, the amount of food you are eating is not an issue per se-ish. Perhaps it's the type and quantities of food you are allowing yourself to eat. See, all calories are not created equally. A cup of strawberry energy calories will function differently than a cup of almond energy calories. Both are good sources of energy. One, however, will consume more of our calorie allotment a lot faster. And this is something to consider when the 3 o'clock hungries comes calling. Did you know that instead of ditching both or eating both, you could actually eat the cup of strawberries and half the amount of almonds, and you are still putting yourself well on the way towards creating a calorie deficit, cutting back on high calorie foods high in sugar, fat, and simple carbohydrates that are typically higher in calories than our body energy reserves needs for, doing things like sleeping and sitting and watching Hulu, is one way around documenting every single morsel that we put into our mouths. Does it seem like food, what to eat, what not to eat, the quest to lose weight seems to be constantly on your mind? And that's not really what you want. Let's be real. There are so many other fun and enjoyable aspects of life to fixate our thoughts on. You want to be able to go about your day thinking about and doing other things that are non-food related. But is that even possible when you're trying to lose weight? At first, I didn't think there was life without thinking about what to eat, eating for health, to live in a body that I like. That was foreign. So I suppose it made sense at the time that I thought about what and how to eat a lot. It was new territory for me. On the flip side, the more I practiced and educated myself about nutrition and how to use nutrition to achieve my goals, the easier it became to not hyper-focus on food and simply live a life from a place of having a good relationship with food. Without documenting, I practiced what I called instituting some standards. Basically, having a set of standards of how I will behave around food. One of my standards is to practice eating slower. I do most things fast. I talk, walk, think, and I eat fast. My eating too fast doesn't give time for that mind-body connection to get in sync, a self-regulating process our bodies have to assist us in not overeating, by the way. We set and have standards for so many other areas in our lives, around finances, our friends, the places that we'll go, will not go, things we'll see, not see. We have standards for so many things. Why not have standards around how we will interact with food in a healthy and positive way? It's a no-fuss kind of a way of creating space to be in a calorie deficit. I'm curious, what standards do you have in place to help you reach your weight loss goals? You know what I discovered about myself after losing 80 pounds? I don't like relying too much on one way of doing things, with food intake manipulation as the only viable option. I'm not crazy about that. And see, this misconception of food intake being the only variable when it comes to a calorie deficit can happen when there is limited understanding around calorie deficit. So yes, eating knowingly, eating smaller portions, eating better quality foods are means that we can use to help us get into a good calorie deficit. However, we should not neglect the incorporation of physical activity. These chair-assisted exercises can be done at home or as another means we get to use to put ourselves in a calorie deficit.